Yes. And the last guest that we have for this segment is Brian from the Bromance Crew. Bromance Crew is an online community or channel on Twitter which caters to the gay and bi community. Okay, the Bromance Crew hosts live tweets daily for their members or followers whom they call Cabro. Brian is the advisor and host of the segment hashtag TBSweetKink, which is the equivalent of their sex segment. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hello. Okay, now to start off, we've got a lot to discuss this evening on 50 Shades of Sexuality. Let's start with Mira. Mira, as our resource person here, can you give us an overview of sexuality, orientation, and identity? What are those things exactly, and how is that going to come up for this conversation?
Let me start with our basic conception of men and women. So that typically our notion is that there are only two types of people in the world. You have man and woman. But within that binary, that man-woman, there are actually many concepts assumed. So for example, your typical man is actually a biologically male, whose gender expression is masculine and is assumed to be straight or heterosexual. So immediately you have gender, you have sex, gender, and sexual orientation within a concept like man. The same with woman. So what we're trying to show here is how people generally are, we are all simple human beings, and we tend to create categories of people. So we created these just two types, man, woman, but we will break that and show that there are many types of people. For example, in terms of biological sex, you can have intersex people who are in between maleness and femaleness. You can have transgendered people, and you've had a show on transgenderism where you can have your expressed gender not matching your assigned sex at birth. And of course, sexual orientation. And with orientation, it was always assumed that everyone was straight, and now we're seeing that there are people who are attracted to the same sex, who fall in love with the same sex, who can live their entire lives with a person of the same sex. So you have men who love men, and typically we refer to them as gay men, and you have women who love women, and typically we refer to them as lesbians, and you have people who can be attracted or drawn to both sexes and are referred to as bisexuals.
Let's go first. Is it correct to say that gender is what the gender that we are assigned at birth? Would it be accurate to say now that orientation is also synonymous to preference?
To what? Sorry?
To preference.
Okay. Before these terms were interchanged, but within psychology we would use the word orientation to signify that it's something internal and deep within a person rather than a choice. Because preference sort of connotes that you can choose to not be gay or not be lesbian, when in actuality you don't choose. You only choose to be true to who you are. Or not.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's the first. Let's have that as our first takeaway for this evening. You do not choose to be gay, or it's not a choice to be made. Yes. Okay. And I'm sorry, before I interrupted, we were also going into, we defined gender, we defined orientation, which, let's be clear, as just what you said, Vera, it's to be differentiated from preference. And lastly, identity. What is identity?
Okay, so given these categories of homosexual, bisexual, heterosexual, and people can create more and more categories and types of sexuality, we can choose to identify or see ourselves as such. So will a lesbian person see herself as a lesbian, accept herself as a lesbian? Will a gay man use the word gay to refer to himself? So this is now identity, and in some psychologists have referred to this as an identity development process. So how you are able to accept who you are, and how you're able to come out to yourself and then come out to others.
That is, so identity would be the external expression?
You can say that it's at one level it's identifying to yourself, so it's self-acceptance, and then at another level it's telling other people, so hopefully facilitating acceptance by others.
All right. Okay. Now, right from that telling of other people, let's go to you, Seb. You actually came out in a YouTube video. What prompted your decision to come out on YouTube? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd been closeted up till that point, so it was really my coming out was my music video, which premiered on Valentine's Day of this year, over a month ago. And what prompted me personally, it wasn't really just gaining acceptance or doing something solely for myself. I would say I was more comfortable. I was comfortable with my sexuality. I was comfortable with who I was still at that point in time. If anything, I just realized, most of my following was here in the Philippines, knowing how underrepresented this minority is. Some people would appreciate someone who has a social media following, someone who isn't always recognized as stereotypically gay, to put themselves out there. And it doesn't happen a lot when you talk about showbiz, all the more so. In the showbiz industry, whether Philippines or the US, it just never happens.
And what was the reaction to your coming out? Were a lot of girls disappointed?
You hear the word sayang a lot. And I kind of take it with a grain of salt. It's not like I'm, bent out of shape over what some people would call disappointment. It's just what it is. I know who I speak to. For the most part, I really do sincerely care a lot about the gay minority, knowing what it's like to be in their position, because what I haven't mentioned yet was that I come from a family of Jehovah's Witnesses, a very conservative background, and coming out to my parents was actually probably a 5-year process. Was impossible. It cut off my financial stability because they disowned me at the time at 17, and it really complicated my life. It was one hurdle after another, and it was things like that, particular to our minority, a case you hear time and time again. But yeah, those factors, all of that, when you put it together, that is a large part of what motivated me to come out on my social media. It stays really public. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I can't get any more public than that. Okay. What about you, Deng? Let's talk about you and your own identity realization. What have you got to share?
Well, I've never really felt the need to come out. But yeah, ever since I already knew that I was attracted to girls. Although I'd still find boys cute. But
from an aesthetic point of view.
Yeah, but to be in a relationship with someone, I've so far only with girls. So there.
Why is it that you never really felt the need to come out? Was it just like, to you, just natural, or I don't know how to define that?
I actually also don't know. I just don't, like, with my family, I didn't really ever feel like I needed to tell them, hi, I'm gay or something. I just if I'm with someone, I bring them if we have family dinners or something, but I never officially came out. Also maybe because I'm not really comfortable being labeled. I don't know if that's cliche that I
Okay.
don't want to be labeled. But I really feel I don't feel comfortable if you like introduce myself as a lesbian. No. So I don't know, Miss Neer, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's very true. There's so many different things that have come up here about being labeled. There's also something about sayang, which I'll put in quotation marks. But before we get to Mira and ask you for your opinion on that, let's first go to Brian. Brian, what about you? Tell us about your own identity realization.
I am gay. I identify myself as gay, but as you can see, I am in the closet. I decide not to come out because of certain circumstances that I cannot avoid, and which made me choose to stay to rather not publicly. Yes, not publicly express my sexuality.
Okay. And that's why we just wanted to also put into context that when you do the tweeting or the host for hashtag TBCKink, you use a different name, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Ryan. Yes. Ryan is not my real name. Ryan is an assumed name for TBC purposes.
All right. Now, Mira, we all want to hear from you about these things that we've heard. First, there was, Seb talking about sayang. I can hear that. I can understand that from the point of view of, the girls have lost another viable option. But the other thing is, Seb, you were saying, I'm not bent out of shape, or I'm not something that needs to be fixed, and therefore what's sayang about that? Deng was talking about being uncomfortable being labeled, but at the same time not feeling the need to say, hey, hi, I'm a lesbian. I guess in the same way I don't feel like saying, hi, I'm Anna, I'm a girl. Right? And Brian had issues about coming out because of certain societal pressures and cultural pressures as well. Let's hear from you, Nero.
Okay. Maybe in terms of perception of science, said earlier, even people as real men, real women, need to fall in love with each other, get married, have children. And in that sense, the sayang hindi ka tunay na lalaki, or you're not a real man. Which I think for at least the people here and hopefully the people listening to us no longer believe to that ideology of a real man and an unreal man. But there is that belief, and I think sometimes it's that belief that we have to deal with, and hence the need to come out to tell people that it's okay, and that to me even to form a collective identity with other people and say it's okay for all of us to be different. But it's interesting because when Deng said that she did not feel the need to come out. I've heard that from many people, and also the desire not to be labeled. So some people actually create new names. For some people, the word queer is a way of removing all the labels altogether. So you can make up a name or choose not to be named at all and just be who you are. So I think for me, although I wouldn't say I'm the expert in your life, no, I don't think I'm the expert in anyone's life, but to me, I see it as really reaching a level of so much acceptance. That maybe in the family, she has gained acceptance already among friends, so there's really no need to be coming out. You just sort of live life the way it's meant to be lived.
All right. And Deng was already, in our email exchanges, Deng was like, I have to hear what Mira has to say about this. And coming from that, when we go to what Brian was saying about certain pressures that prevent him from coming out, Mira, before you answer that, let's add in also a question that we got from Miguel Chirosh, I hope I pronounced that last name correctly, on Twitter. How do we address discrimination outside of the realm of legislation? Maybe you want to answer first societal pressures about coming out, and then going to addressing discrimination. I can hear from any of you about addressing discrimination. Mira?
Okay, so I think what we're seeing from Brian is how coming out, um, it's a decision to come out at every space in our lives, whether we come out to family, to friends, in school, at work, and there will be different reasons or factors why we can or cannot come out. And it's not just because we don't accept ourselves, but it's because of, as he said, these pressures, like we might risk losing our jobs, or we might risk losing the person we love because that person is not out to his or her family. So we make these decisions on a daily basis. I would say on a daily basis, and for some people, it could be a grand statement of coming out to the world, and I suppose not caring what the world thinks. But some people don't are not in that position to be able to be as free to speak or share who they are.
Okay. I'd like to go to Brian. What is the status of homosexuality in the Philippines? Based on, you guys have a lot of followers on the Bromance Crew, and there's this notion that homosexuality is so accepted. Everybody has a gay friend. It's so hip, a gay boyfriend, and all of that. But we've seen in some recent events in the media that it's really, sometimes it's not accepted, homosexuality. It's merely tolerated. What have you seen? And based on your own experience as well, what can you say about that?
I think, homosexuals, gays and guys in the country feel like they are being tolerated merely because their presence are now felt. And because of that, the people around them are now pressured to merely accept them because they're already out. So it's like the people around them don't have any other choice. As for discrimination, it still exists. Although people are outwardly accepting or merely tolerating them, we still see people with derogatory attitudes toward gays and bis in the country. For example, let's look at how we see gays and bis represented in the media. We merely see them as mostly gays and bis are represented as comic relief. So that's how most gay and bisexuals here in the country feel, that they are not being treated seriously, that are being treated less than the other, less than straight people. So yes, discrimination still exists, and yeah, we feel that gays are just tolerated.
Okay, meron pa tayo. I'll jump a little bit. There's another segment that we'd like to talk about, which is men who have sex with men, or MSM, which a lot of people confuse with being gay, or say it's just a cover-up for being gay. But let's hear a little bit from you, Brian, about MSM, and what have you guys also have a following of MSM. And it's not exactly gay, right?
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, MSM are men who have sex with men. They cover gays, bisexuals, and even straight men who happen to have sex with men. Yes, straight men can actually have sexual encounters with other men, whether these men be straight or gay.
And that doesn't make them gay?
No, it doesn't make them gay. We have followers actually who tweeted of their experiences with straight guys, and these guys even have straight relationships after having those sexual encounters with our followers. So yes, straight men do exist. Straight men that have sex with men do exist, and I guess, it's like this. Some straight men consider certain sexual acts, or they equate certain sexual acts not homosexual, as not homosexual enough for them to be considered gay. For example, if they receive oral sex, or if they act as the giver in a sexual encounter, that doesn't make them homosexual.
Okay, that's so interesting. There's like a definition of the sexual acts that you engage in. Parang may degree to which you are supposed to be gay. Mira, what can you say about that? This is a topic that we want to discuss because on one side the girls are asking, so how are we going to know if our boyfriend is really straight, quote unquote, or he happens to like having sex with men.
Know. You can't.
Sometimes. Okay, we won't know. Mira?
Well, it's very difficult to tell, because I think that most people will just take it at face value that what their whoever their lover, whatever their lover says is the truth. But as what Brian was saying, behavior is, especially, this is interesting because there's no, what's this, parallel WSW, meaning it's not used as often. WSW, women having sex with women.
Wow, I thought it was Wall Street or something.
It's usually, because MSM was originally a public health term,
Right.
which is actually linked to HIV and AIDS. But in any case, that's why the MSM refers to act behavior alone. Because that was what was important for the HIV advocates to know whether people were engaging. Yes, yes. However, as we're trying to differentiate between behavior and then there's the attraction. Are you attracted to the person you're having sex with? Like, are you actually a man attracted to men? Do you fall in love with men, let's say, as a man? So attraction, falling in love, that's orientation, which you may have the attraction and never express it through behavior. Like, you could be a gay priest, right? Or a lesbian nun. Same way with a heterosexual priest, you don't engage in, supposedly you engage in the act, but you have an orientation. You have these feelings inside. So it's
Feelings inside.
And then, and then there's identity, which is again distinct, because do you see yourself as gay, or as Brian was saying, MSMs don't always identify as gay.
Okay. Seb, you were shaking your head there, a while back about how do we know if our boyfriend is MSM or gay, and you were like, nope. What does that mean? What's going through your head?
There's just, it feels like a running stereotype that there's lots of, among Asian men, married Asian men, times where people will experiment. I mean, people will experiment in and outside of any relationship, marriage, and I guess there's nothing I can say right now really comforting to a girl when it comes to that. But I would love to mention something about labels if I have a minute.
Yes.
When it comes to labels, it's very, very obvious to me how much this country and this part of the world in general, Southeast Asia, hates the word gay. It's like it's something you would stay away from at any cost. And I respect the argument that holds labels as something unnecessary. That's true. I feel like that can be the case for a lot of people, like our friend earlier. But it seems that labels sometimes also ties into a sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. You have a group of people that you have maybe a common interest with, you have a culture, and gay Filipinos are known for having gay lingo. You have an entire language. That's a pretty big element of the culture. You have history. Yeah. So in my case, maybe it's more because I was raised in the U.S., I have a Western background. The word gay isn't something I stay away from. I see that if a few more people allowed themselves to be open, I guess, to a label, it allows them to just, maybe it's more for a sense of normalcy, maybe it's more for a sense of belonging, but I see it being something that can be helpful. something that has its own purpose.
Okay, thanks, Seb. Dang, I'm gonna go to you because you were the one who brought up the being uncomfortable with labels, and I need to also ask some questions from people who are tweeting. They're piling up. The questions are piling up.
Wow.
So you might want to take this, Dang. Let me know. One is defined by curious. Is it just wondering? I'm just wondering if it's really a form of sexuality. So 2 questions for you about being comfortable with labels, and what is bi curious?
First, being labeled again. I think it's more of I want to be labeled because, especially here in the Philippines, being gay is like it's too stereotyped. Like if you say that you're gay, everyone thinks that you have to be this or that, and I don't associate. I don't feel comfortable, and I'm not like that. I'm just like any other person. So I don't. Sure.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, go ahead, Seb.
It's funny because you use that as a reason, like you're not like that. That's why you wouldn't never use that label. But that's kind of the reason why I felt. That's actually the reason why I felt all the more the reason for me to use that label. Because yeah, it's a stereotype. It's a sense of thinking that obviously doesn't follow reality all the time. But opposing that sometimes allows people to realize what it is for what it is. A pattern of thinking that doesn't always follow reality.
But then you also mentioned that you like girls more than you like guys, but you find them cute. Is that a fluidity? Because sometimes you
appreciate beauty.
Whether it's the form of a man or a woman.
Yeah, why not? It's like art, no? But
also the idea is that sexuality is a fluid spectrum.
Yes, I believe that it is fluid.
All right.
Yes. That there are no rules, and you just have to follow your where you're attracted to.
We have a question from Abolski. Is coming out a requirement for validating who you are? I can relate to Deng about not feeling the need to.
I think it depends on you. It really depends on you. If you feel like you need to, then maybe you should. But no one else can force it upon you to come out. And I think you have to feel it if you really need to or when the time is right.
I guess a corollary to this question is, what if you're asked? Is that okay also? Is it okay to be asked?
Can I respond?
Sorry. Is it okay
to be asked if I were gay?
Yeah, a lot of people ask.
A lot of boys.
Oh. I think sounding Saya. Brian, what about you? There's a question here about how is sexuality different from being gay?
Well, bisexuals are sexually attracted to both men and women. And gays are solely attracted, or men who are solely attracted sexually to men. So the problem is, and I've heard about this, and this got tweeted from a follower of ours, that in the Philippine context, bisexuality or the label bisexual is sometimes used by gay men who wants to appear straight or assume that straight acting status.
But is that MSM or is that different from being MSM?
Well, first, I don't think MSM is a gender. I think MSM is a classification of men who simply have sex with men. I think it's more relevant when we talk about health issues like in the prevention of the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. But MSM does not apply to the issue of sexuality.
Okay, Mira, what do you say about that? Should we just limit MSM to, for purposes of better understanding, to a behavior?
I would agree that it is with reference to behavior.
Okay.
But the kind of talk we are having is really a question of identity, including the bi-curious. Do you identify, like, you can be, if we see sexuality as fluid, you can actually going through a process of just exploring your sexuality. And that can be a valid, legitimate orientation at that moment. And then you can identify later on maybe as bisexual or as gay
or yeah, as lesbian or whatever. All right. I'll ask all of the guests tonight this question. How do you make your parents understand? From at Mike is my name, okay. This is a question from Twitter. How do you make your parents understand? Seb, you want to start?
Sure. Mike is my name, okay, is one of my followers. He's a bubble, and one of the names I'll remember off my Twitter because I try to pay attention to as many as I can. The question is, how do you tell your parents?
How do you make your parents understand?
Okay, as much as I've said this also before, as much as I would love to encourage people to come out to their families and their parents, I'm a little wary of saying that point blank because some people simply don't have, the financial stability this early in life if they're young. Some people, even if older, risk losing their job. There's that aspect as well. But if you are in a position where you can, if you're in a position where you feel like your parents are open-minded enough and you really want to make that decision, I've told friends, sometimes it's a great little trick to just have a mutual friend of yours that your parents know, and have him happen to bring up some gay topic out of nowhere. Just one day, like, oh, you know what, Barack Obama just said this, blah, blah, and see what your parents have to say, get the feeling for where they are.
Testing the waters.
Testing the waters. It's a little bit of a trick, and simple as it may sound, really kind of helps you. You can do it in such a way where you can find out exactly how your parents feel about any particular issue, if you are smart enough to think out exactly what you want, to figure out.
Mira, we'll save you for last on that question about how to make your parents understand. But Dan, what about you? How do you make your parents understand?
Well, I've never come out, so but I'm very lucky that I've never felt like my parents would not accept me. I always felt that my parents, although my mom has already passed away, so I only have my dad, but I've always felt like he would accept me and he'd love me. That's why I think that's why I also feel like I don't need to come out, because I know anyway that it's okay. So I guess I'm lucky in that sense.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, if you felt that you were more the exception or the rule in your particular case. What are some common misconceptions or stereotypes that you experienced, Deng, if any?
Stereotypes towards me?
Yes.
Or being... well, if for example, a friend of mine who's a guy knows that I like girls, he'd immediately introduce me as someone who's a lesbian who only likes girls. Or that I'm into more manly things. Typical, like I have short hair, so that's why I'm gay. So.
Okay, did he give you a jackhammer or something?
Yeah, a white
Brian, let's go to you. How do you make your parents understand?
Well, it's difficult for me to give a response to this because I haven't come out yet, so
how do you plan to make them understand?
Oh.
That's not even in the stars for you.
Well, I'm really looking forward to that time when I can finally come out to my parents. But for now, I'm literally gonna kill my mom if I do come out. So Yeah, so I'm waiting for that time when I finally come out, and if I do, I guess the only way I can make them, or I can at least make them feel better about it, is the fact that I'm still me. I'm still their son, and I just happen to love differently than my straight siblings. So, but I'm still their child. I'm still the person that they knew.
Mm-hmm.
And
And I,
yeah.
yeah, I'd like to let's spend a little bit more time on this question because in Philippine society it's so important what your parents think, what your parents' friends think, and what your parents' friends think. Right? So important. And we've seen also that the love life of our children sometimes is played out on air. Mira, what advice would you give to those people who are listening right now and viewing us, thinking about how to come out to their parents and how to make their parents understand? What would you say?
Okay. Well, first I think as our friends have shared, it's really a question of readiness. Are you ready? And that readiness is whether you come to accept yourself and you have the support perhaps or the resources um, to live that identity. You have some friends perhaps that have accepted you, and and typically many LGBT people would first share to a friend, then before disclosing to their own parents. And maybe I just wanted to say that, well, I do agree with Brian that, I mean, I've heard that line that people use to tell their parents to say that I'm still the same person.
Okay.
I hope that you will still like, see me as the same child, that I love you and I hope you will love me too. But the thing I think that I just want to emphasize is how we have to also see that our families will go through a process of acceptance, and that may not come right away. So we also give our parents time to reflect, to think about it, to see us in a different way, to also see when they are ready, and then maybe the family will come together to that point of accepting you for who you are. I particularly like the story of Ellen's mom. Everybody knows Ellen DeGeneres and how
Yes.
her mom had come out years back to express her love for her daughter, and how every people who hear this story, I think parents who will hear that story, could see that you can still be a loving parent, and you can have a very beautiful daughter or son, who happens to be lesbian, gay, bisexual.
We have time for one more question. I hope we can squeeze this in. This is from Sefian 31. In the Philippines, how can you be a good Christian and be openly gay? Does anybody want to take that? Touche. But does anybody want to take that question?
Well, can I speak?
Please, Mira.
Yes, that, Christianity, the message of Christianity is love. So always, to me, it's just a matter of love. Be a loving person, then you're being a good Christian.
God loves you.
Yeah.
No matter what.
No matter what.
Right?
Okay.
That's why he's God.
I think we also need to recognize that your God may be different from the God of other people.
Yes.
Right? I may be worshiping a goddess, for example. Not necessarily a
God
god.
is a woman.
There are many gods and goddesses.
Okay. All right. We have to wrap up now, but we had such an interesting conversation. We barely scratched the surface, but I hope that this has helped us get a better understanding of sexuality and its whole wide spectrum. I think some of the main things that we were able to pick up this evening is, number one, sexuality is fluid. It's a wide spectrum where you could be on one hand woman who likes men, on the other hand man who likes woman, and everything in between is really a matter of personal decision and self-determination, or just the way you are. We spent quite a little bit of time on how to make our parents understand, and I think that also goes to show that a lot of people are still struggling with gaining acceptance. We had previously come from a point where we thought that homosexuality was just so out that we all have gay friends. We see them all in the media. There are many of them who occupy very esteemed positions in society. But still there is this fear of being shunned and not being accepted. And I would like to comment, not as a psychologist, I will not pretend to be one, but I will merely comment as a parent. And this is the question, in answer to the question, how do you make your parents understand? I read this tweet that said, don't we all want to have straight children? And I had to respond to that and say, wait a minute, who's we? Because when our parents, and me speaking as a parent, when we knew that we were going to have a child, it didn't matter if they were a boy or a girl, right? You ask in the early stages of a couple being pregnant, do you want a boy or girl? A lot of them will say it doesn't matter. I just want a child who is happy and who is healthy. And I think that when they grow up, that's the same wish we should continue to have for them. It's difficult, yes, because we, as parents, normally have dreams for our children. Walk them down the aisle if they're a girl, to teach them football if they're a boy. It's something stereotypical as that. So we also have to recognize that those are our dreams for our children. And our children's lives were not meant to live out our dreams for them. They have lives of their own. They have dreams to actualize for themselves. Thank you very much to everyone for joining us for the first segment of 50 Shades of Sexuality. Thank you, Sebastian Castro.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mira Acordeo. Thank you, Den Garcia. And thank you, Brian, and everyone from the Bromance Crew.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be back after 10 to 15 minutes for a break. We'll have our second batch of guests. Mira, thank you in advance for graciously agreeing to join me for this second segment where we'll be discussing bisexuality. For those of you who are following us on #SexTalk, please